For tonight's first chapter, we're going to visit the fair folk in Dirty Lying Fairies by Wattpad star Sabrina Blackberry.
My love is like a flower, I'm trying to get you over. You like love sour, then you should come try my poison.
Oh hey, I'm Rodney V. Smith. The V is for vainglorious because sometimes you gotta keep patting yourself in the back. I'm a Wattpad author and star, and also a winner of a Watty Award in 2018 for my book, The Canefield Killer, which is available on Wattpad, so check it out. Also look for my comedic vampire series, How Not to Vampire. As you know by now, I'm an author, which means that a whole lot of my friends are also authors, and I like to talk about what my friends are doing. So I've decided one of the best ways to do that would be to read the first chapter of their books on video. So that's how we end up here. Most books, you can get a lot from a synopsis, but with the first chapter, it tells you if you like a book, and more importantly, if you like the author. This is not a review, just me sharing and presenting the books as written. You get to be the judge of how cool the stories are. The work always speaks for itself. Now, this is a warning here. This is usually my first time or second time reading, so you get to hear all of my takes, every single one of them. Fun, right? As always, the links are in the description. Okay, you ready? Let's check it out. Synopsis for Dirty Lying Fairies. With a kiss of her hand, Thea is transported into the fairy world. Now she's trapped in the fairy court, with fate drawing her to Devin and into danger. When recent grad Thea gets dragged to a black tie gala at an art gallery, she didn't expect to meet the handsome Devin. With a brief glimpse at some art and a kiss to her hand, Thea is unknowingly pulled into the world of the Fae. She never believed in fairies until she started seeing them for herself. With strange creatures visible on the streets and fangs and colors flashing in the shadows, Thea has to accept the truth. Fairies are real, and she is a part of their world. Will a blossoming romance keep her afloat in a world of magic? Or will she be drawn into the darkness by threats she's only beginning to understand? For better or worse, the newest changeling has arrived. Let's get into chapter 1. The Green-Eyed Devil. Thea. Is that really what you're going to wear? Candace looked at me with one eyebrow raised, her perfect pink manicure tapping on her desk in blatant judgment. Apparently not, I mumbled. Correct. Her straight blonde hair just brushed the top of her shoulder as she tilted her head in concentration. She was dressed to kill in a little gold cocktail number. Are you going to tell me what's wrong with it? I craned my neck to see my backside in the mirror. I was wearing a gray dress that fell to my ankles. My hair was up in its usual messy brown bun. Thea, that dress is a disaster. The silhouette is all wrong for your body type. The seams in the top are doing nothing for your chest, and I honestly can't believe you're going to wear flats to a classy event. She stood dramatically, her chair legs squeaking as they slid a few inches across the tile floor. I'm going to have to dress you. No, I snapped. Yes, she purred. I don't even want to go, I said. I'm there for you and the fancy food. All the more reason to look hot. Her heels clicked across the tiles with excitement as she threw open her closet doors. The Candace Lewis entourage has to be as hot as Candace Lewis herself. Well, almost. I'm your entourage now? I asked. Oh, just get your butt over here. She pulled several things out of the piles of clothes in her extensive wardrobe, pondering them for a moment before discarding them in a nearby armchair. Where the hell is that designer gown I just bought? The red one? Candy, that has like no back to it. I walked toward the closet, biting my lower lip. Yeah, that's kind of the point. She shoved her whole torso between two large coats. If I had your yoga babe shoulder blades, I'd never cover them up. I can barely hear you through all that fabric, I said. Isn't something backless a little too cold for December? Well, fashion is pain and all that. Ha ha! She emerged triumphant, holding up a long red gown. Now, get the monstrosity off and put this on. The things I do in the name of friendship. I slipped my dress off and left it on the floor where it fell. Candace was on me in one fell swoop, sliding the red satin over my head and smoothing it down my body. She stood back and eyed me from top to bottom. Gorgeous. She clasped her hands together and flashed a wicked grin. You look absolutely devastating. I'll get my black pumps. She dove into her closet once more, and I turned again to the mirror. I felt devastating. The neckline plunged, but not quite out of my comfort zone. The satin squeezed every drop of curve it could out of my hips and flared out just before it brushed the top of my thighs. It was hands down the most flattering garment I had ever worn. Here, put these on. Match it with this ruby lip gloss, and for God's sake, Thea, run a brush through your hair. Candace smoothed down her dress and checked her reflection next to mine. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't argue with her advice. Grabbing the brush, I smoothed out my bun to something neater that Candy wouldn't complain about. She squinted at me and stuck a decorative silver hairpin in it before nodding her approval. What would I do without you, Candy? I turned to eye my side view in the mirror with a grin. You'd die a book hoard in a dark basement apartment surrounded by antiques and tears. Now, let's go. She threw the door open and spun around with a gleam in her eyes. It's time to watch Candace Lewis sparkle. Atelier Rouge, or the Red Studio, was an oversized greenhouse in the middle of an elaborate garden. It was the workshop of French painter Marcel Dubois and was painted, you guessed it, red. The studio had been preserved as a museum, and a modern art gallery was built on the grounds in front of it. It was a classy place for sure. Much classier than our ride anyway. How did you say you got an invitation again? I felt a little silly pulling up in the same van have had since high school, but Candace insisted I drive so she could drink her weight in overpriced wine, as she'd put it. I told you already. She reapplied her lipstick in the mirror before opening the door and climbing out of the van. My boss couldn't make it, so she gave her tickets to whoever gave her the best article this month. This is a pretty exclusive party. Are you sure we dressed appropriately for this? I eyed an elderly couple walking in. They reeked of old money, and I could swear they both stared at me. Well, maybe it was the rusty van they were staring at. If so, I couldn't blame them. Relax, Thea. I work for a fashion magazine. I think I can pull together a couple evening wear looks. Candace smoothed her skirt and grabbed my wrist. Now, let's go. I was practically dragged to the front door where a man in a tux collected tickets and scratched names off his list. Candace ogled the other guests, and I tried my best to turn invisible. I thought I was going to die of embarrassment when the guy at the door stopped to rave loudly about Candy's boss and her tickets. When the lady behind us cleared her throat in annoyance, he finally let us pass. Once we were inside, the extravagance really started to sink in. It was elegant. Soft yellow light illuminated the room, casting a golden glow everywhere. In the crowd, there were women wearing jewelry that probably cost more than my whole year's paycheck. There was a champagne fountain in the center of a huge buffet table. Even the waitstaff were dressed in black tie as they glided around the rooms with trays of drinks. Somewhere, a piano was playing seasonal music, and a large portion of the marble floor was covered in couples dancing. Candy, this is way out of my league. How am I supposed to talk to anyone here? I whispered. Oh, relax. She sauntered towards the table with refreshments, and I followed her like a baby duckling. You're here for the food anyway, right? Just grab a plate and enjoy the art. Actually, you should find a cute piece of ass and dance while you're all dolled up. You look absolutely delicious in this lighting. Whatever, Candy, I sighed. And you're going to be where? Rubbing elbows with the rich and famous. She winked. I'll let you be a bridesmaid in my posh celebrity wedding once I land one of these hotties. Of course. I rolled my eyes as she blew me a kiss. Candace swooped a glass of champagne off a passing tray and waded into the crowd. I certainly wasn't going to follow her, so I took her advice and headed for the food. And holy hell, the food! Things made of fruit or cheese or meats were everywhere. Pastries that looked as though they took 20 minutes just to decorate were stacked on porcelain trays. I had to stop myself from breaking off the head of a carved chocolate swan. As much as it tempted me, it was probably just for decoration. Even the plates looked expensive, with gold leaf edges and a monogram for the gallery. I loaded up on appetizers I'd probably never have the chance to try again and walked towards the art. The food was amazing, but the art was terrible. Painting after painting of tortured grey blobs lined the wall. Maybe I didn't know much about modern art, but this looked like something my niece made at daycare. At first, I occupied myself with listening to the other guests' opinions of the artwork, but I would occasionally catch some of them watching me, which set my nerves on edge. It wasn't someone looking my way that felt off, it was a few of them blatantly staring at me that gave me the creeps. Was I that out of place? Or was it Candace's dress? I stared away from the art critics and went to see how Candy was doing. Taking in the dance floor from the safety of the wall, I watched Candace glue herself to a guy with too much gel in his hair. At least she was having fun. Between dances, she would talk to a group of gorgeous people that had gathered near her. She was reveling in the attention. I could see the victory in her eyes from here, and when she spotted me, she winked. Since I wasn't planning on dancing, I decided to leave before Candace pulled me into it. I wandered into a different exhibit room, specifically the most secluded one I could find. It was the Marcel Dubois exhibit, not one of the ever changing collections that passed from gallery to gallery. Most of the guests had probably seen this exhibit before and didn't bother with it tonight. I walked along the halls, munching on crostini and regretting Candace's choice in my footwear. I paused in a particularly dim corner to rest my feet, hide, and eat. Beautiful. A gravelly voice rumbled over my shoulder, causing me to jump. I whirled around to see a man in a finely tailored suit. He had dark hair just long enough to pull back in a ponytail and dancing green eyes. This creature was a walking sin. What? I replied stupidly, then swallowed my mouthful of petit four. My heart threatened to burst right through my chest in surprise. I hadn't heard him coming at all. The paintings. They're beautiful, don't you think? He asked, a glint of amusement in his eyes. Yes, I answered shortly, tripping over my own tongue. I set my plate on a table behind me, hoping he hadn't seen me stuffing my face. He laughed softly, a low, comfortable sound that crawled up my back and whispered dark promises in my ears. Much better than the grey outdoors up front, but I suppose that's what's in now. He smiled at me again, and I actually snorted a laugh. Then I turned bright red. Somebody kill me before I make it worse. I immediately moved my focus to the artwork. Hopefully, he couldn't see my face in the dim lighting. Only the lights over the artwork were bright. Is this your first time to a look? Excuse me. Is this your first time to l'Atelier Rouge? The R in the French word rolled down my skin and sank into my stomach like hot coals. Yes, it is. I could barely get the words out. Why was he talking to me anyway? It had to be obvious I wasn't rich or sophisticated like the other guests. Marvelous. Would you enjoy a private tour? He grinned, a wicked emotion dancing across his lips. Do you know much about the art then? I asked, taking a small step towards the painting and away from him. This was the most dangerous kind of man, the kind that would chew up and spit out a boring girl like me in an instant. I had to get away from him. Candy, help! I should hope so. His green eyes glinted as he stepped forward, closing the distance I had just put between us. I owned the gallery. Oh, I breathed. What do I say to that? Oh, hello, Mr. Rich and Cultured Businessman. I'm Thea. I just graduated from community college and I know nothing about modern art. I would love to waste your time with a tour of a gallery. But he didn't seem the least bit concerned as he continued. This series here. This series here. Let me try that again. This series here are some of his earliest landscapes. I nodded to the wall he indicated, and we inspected them closer. Masterfully painted even to my amateur eye. I recognized the nearby lake, a field of wheat, and his own greenhouse studio. He led me through the exhibit, showing me painting after painting until we reached the farthest wall. It was like I was in a trance. I couldn't take my eyes off of him until he pointed me to the next painting. His every suggestion pulled at me, and I couldn't help but comply. Here you can see the difference in his later years of work. For instance, He swept an arm before him. This was one of Marcel's last pieces before he passed. Near the end of his life, he would claim to see things in the forest. Fairy tales come to life. The moment his lips stopped moving, my eyes snapped to the art. The painting was a dark line of trees behind rows of gorgeous pink lilies, the sun shining on the grass before the forest. Behind the green branches, a blackness contrasted the sunny field. Eerie eyes peered out from behind the tree trunks. I wouldn't have noticed them if they hadn't been pointed out to me. He moved, drawing my attention again. The gentle scent of his cologne brushing my nose. He stepped backwards, eyes on me, and without looking away, he waved at another painting. This one is a personal favorite, he purred. Despite myself, I walked towards him, breaking eye contact at the last minute to stare at the painting. It was a little girl with a bouquet of wildflowers as big as she was. Her smile was missing a front tooth, and it wasn't until I looked closer that it almost seemed like her ears were pointed. What do you think of Marcel's work? He had crept in close without me noticing. His sudden, rolling voice sent a chill down my spine. He was a very skilled painter. I took a step back, licking my dry lips. If not a bit eccentric in the end. He threw his head back and laughed. My chest tightened at the sound. I took a step back, watching those green eyes dance. Yes, I suppose eccentric is an excellent word for Marcel. He straightened his silver tie and offered me a hand. I'm afraid I've babbled on about Marcel and haven't even introduced myself yet. My name is Devin. I gave him my hand to shake, but instead he brought my fingers to his lips, kissing them gently. My entire arm tingled. His eyes locked in mine, and I could feel the heat. His eyes locked in mine, and I could feel the heat on my face. I must look like a tomato about now. Yes, he mused, letting my hand go. Thea! Candace called out from the front of the room. My eyes darted to her, wine glass in one hand, heels in the other. She was definitely drunk off her ass. Thea. Devin smiled that wicked smile and tasted my name in his mouth. Thea. It was nice to meet you, Thea. If you ever want to know more about Marcel Dubois, you know where to find me. Right, I swallowed, watching him turn slowly and walk away down the dark hall. Candace wobbled towards me, her face flushed. Thea, dance with me, she slurred, then blinked, watching Devin walk away. Who's the hottie? I blushed and looked at Candace. The owner, I think. Well, his ass should be under one of those damn spotlights, she said, a little too loudly. Several heads turned our way, and I definitely heard a few giggles. What time is it? I've only been here a few minutes and you're already drunk, I sighed. Psh, it's been hours. Thea, look. Candace flicked her phone to life and held it to my face so I could see the time. My jaw dropped. Sure enough, it was much later than I would have imagined. I looked down at the state Candace was in, and my mouth formed a grim line. Come on, Candy. We're getting you home, I mumbled. I think we've both had enough for tonight. End of chapter 1. That's it for Dirty Lying Fairies by Sabrina Blackberry, which is going to be in bookstores soon since Wattpad Books picked up the entire series. You can also find it on wattpad.com. You can check out more of Sabrina's work on Wattpad by following the link in the description, and you can follow her on social media as well. That's all for tonight, so thanks for joining. Don't forget to click the like button down there and subscribe if you want to listen to me read some more first chapters. I try to update 5 days a week, and there's always something new, so see you around.
Trying to get you over. You like love sour, then you should come try my poison.